Good afternoon, Sylvie. We're here to talk about your role as the research champion and the work that you've been doing, what your intentions are for this period of work, what are the parameters of your role. You've been talking to a lot of other academics and you've been trying to bring forward their research and let us know about what's going on. So I think it's time to turn the camera on you this time and ask you perhaps where should we start? You and I have worked together for nearly 7 years now. So perhaps you could tell us your background and the research that you're doing and how you see yourself going forward in this role.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Yeah, it's lovely to have a chat. As you said, we've worked together for quite some time. As you know, I've been a member of a media department at the School of Humanities for now almost 9 years, I can't believe it, and have worked in various roles there, teaching various media courses from PR and advertising to courses that are closer maybe to my research, as I'm having a new course coming up in media and religion and an online course on film and philosophy. As you say, I recently kind of taken on this role as the research team champion for heritage cultures and communities. And that has been a really exciting journey because my research itself that I'm going to talk about in a moment has always been quite interdisciplinary. And so the role I'm doing as a theme champion is also to kind of trying to encourage more of that type of research about collaborations across schools, across different disciplines, across different fields, and kind of helping people out with kind of forming these networks and encouraging the research. So part of the process has been to, as I said, go around and speak to a lot of researchers and to arrange these little kind of clips and a little series of talks that we have been recording. And that has been extremely rewarding because I learned so much about the research and diversity of research that goes in this field of heritage cultures communities, but across lots of different schools and areas. So that was very interesting for me personally as a kind of learning about this area, learning about different ways of doing research as well. So I've spoken with kind of a traditional classic kind of researchers in the arts and humanities, but also more practice-based researchers that work with theatre projects and so on as part of that. And that has really expanded my kind of horizon and hopefully helped to promote this type of research beyond the boundaries of our university. So to the audiences that have looked at these little clips and listened to that. Okay.
So what you're saying is that your role is communications and networking, really, and you're doing that within the university, but you've got an eye on what's going on outside the university.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important part. And you're looking at the relationship between the university and the local community, the local culture. Do you want to expand on that a little bit? Are you reaching out beyond the university, or are you just doing that through the people that you're meeting yourself?
A variety of things. I mean, the interesting thing about the field is that, I mean, sometimes we think, well, humanities, arts, culture, well, it's kind of this what effect that really has. And for me, it's really at the heart of what society does. It isn't just an academic subject. It is essential to our culture, to everything we're doing, the way we interact within communities, within groups and networks. So there are a variety of projects from going into schools and talking to schools, promoting our subjects, but conferences, but also conferences that are not just academic, that are workshops that go beyond it. For example, I mean, the philosophy group, for example, has a collaboration coming up with the study center at St. Albans Cathedral, and that reaches a much kind of broader non-academic audience. It's involved in discussion there. Stuart Milne's theatre projects do reach quite a large audience beyond academia. The work he does with young carers in schools. So there's quite a range of things that go out there. And my role is in supporting this and helping out with and kind of bringing new projects along these lines in.
Now, Sylvie, you've been speaking to a number of academics, colleagues about their work, and it's quite a broad range, I think, of work you've been looking at. Would you share with us what you find interesting, or what you've perhaps found intriguing or compelling about the work that some people are doing?
Yeah, I mean, what I really love is the variety of projects, and I'm going to give you some examples of that in a moment, and also the variety of methods and kind of approaches that people have, to their own research, but also how to bring that to a wider audience. So we have, as part of the research projects, we have the work from Konstantin Sandis, who works in the philosophy department, and who links the work he does in philosophy to working with Microsoft on a kind of theory of action, as well as working on heritage ethic projects that link into tourism and kind of international travel. So there's this whole variety of applications, very practical applications that people can connect with. There are projects like, spoke to Justin Literature, one of our literature lecturers, who has talked about kind of urban way how landscapes are changed and kind of from into wilderness. So this kind of notion about taking literary work about urbanization and kind of interlinking with nature, and kind of expanding these projects by linking in with potential photography, geography, and all these other fields is, I think, very exciting and really right at the heart of what we're trying to do within the theme. Some of the work that Kemik has done in terms of television studies, of course, we all can relate to that, because a lot of us watch the kind of the programs and the kind of television series. That's something we're very familiar with, and that has shaped our culture to quite a significant extent. So there's a whole variety of projects, and I find that really exciting. There are projects in languages that is quite intriguing that we have talked about that. So yeah, for those people who haven't seen clips, I do encourage you kind of having to look at the variety of work that's going on there.
Thank you. That gives us a good insight into a very vibrant field of work, and a very vibrant need for bringing together, especially people in the arts and humanities, I think, in terms of the writing and photography and so on. Would you open up for us a little bit and tell us about your own research, how your own research fits into this, how you relate to perhaps some of the people that you've been talking to, and where you're going in the near future, and where things are going in the maybe in terms of your overall aims and goals?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, as I said at the beginning, my research is quite interdisciplinary. So more specifically, my research is in film studies largely, but I'm approaching film from a philosophical vantage point, and I'm also looking at a lot of religious aspects. So kind of it's at the intersection of film studies, philosophy, and religious studies, if that makes any sense. More specifically, I've worked with a lot of different genres and a lot of different areas of film and television studies, but what really interests me is the notion of myth and narrative and stories, and how they influence our way of seeing the world. And that, of course, has a very strong cultural significance, because when we look at television, and of course that has happened before with literature, but for my area specifically, when we look at film and television in particular periods, we can learn a lot from the cultural anxieties and the worries and the kind of mental situation. Well, mental is maybe not the right word, but the kind of concerns that people have at this particular time. And that particular happens, I find very interesting, not just in genres that you might consider quite realist or quite specific, but I think it happens particularly in the genres I'm interested in: fiction, fantasy, historic epics, science fiction. Other genres are looked in specifically.
Fear and
Absolutely.
the alien, actually, when you think
fear,
about it.
but not just in a negative way, also hopes and aspirations, and the kind of thing, how we want to create our own myths and stories, how each generation does create a version of a world that we want to believe in. Yes, the hopes and ideals. And the project I'm working on at the moment, just to kind of give you an indication of that, is to look at sword and sandal television. So I'm
Say that again, sorry?
Sword and sandal television. So
Salt and sandal.
Sword and sandal in the kind of historic epic or toga epics, as some people say. But in a television kind of scenario. So I'm looking at them from this kind of genre that is maybe more known from the big epic cinema, kind of a la Ben-Hur or Gladiator or these things. But it's also something that has happened in television from the 60s onwards. And I'm looking at the occurrence of that in different periods of time, in 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, to a revival of that, arguably, in recent times with big shows like Spartacus and Rome.
But also
and so
there's
on.
a crossover with things like Game of Thrones.
Oh, absolutely,
and so
yes.
on, isn't there, really?
That have definitely contributed to that. That is a big component. And I find it fascinating how these genres keep appearing at certain points in time, and how they are changed and how they're reflecting certain ways. And with this particular kind of looking at antiquity, we see an interesting trend from something that emerges out of a quite highbrow narrative inspired by Shakespearean tragedies on the one hand, and then a quite lowbrow muscle man kind of inspired by Italian muscle man films of the 60s. If you think of something like Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, and so on. That is definitely highbrow, it's kind of lowbrow, but it's actually, in terms of genre, quite a crossover. And I think the recent installment, a recent version of that, kind of emerge, kind of join these two trajectories, the kind of quite lowbrow, and move that boat into mainstream. And I find that utterly fascinating.
The thing with television is it has to be sustained, isn't it?
Yes,
there's how well you do it is all about how much you invest and how long it can be sustained, how many series you can go with it, and then you can really get into depth with it.
Absolutely. And that will be the kind of, in a way, a follow-up question. So how, looking at what is there already, how can we draw about doing mythic narratives, television series in the future? Is there a way? So there is an attempt of taking that into looking at industry professionals, script writers and so on, and seeing how we can draw conclusions from it, how to develop this kind of television programs in the future.
I think that's very useful for our region and for our area, because we have a long film and television history here, and I'm very conscious of that in my own research, that there's many streets have been filmed many times.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Sylvie, for giving us an oversight and an insight into the work that you're doing. And I wish you all success in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.